Hello, Night Seekers, and welcome to Lacuna Noir. This is where forgotten stories and gentle voices meet, carrying you softly into peaceful sleep, wrapped in mystery. Before tonight's stories begin, I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from? Drop a comment below and let me know. And a little note before we begin. You may notice a few brief ads in the first 10 minutes, but after that, the rest of the video is completely ad-free. Just you, the silence, and the stories. So settle in, get comfortable, and let the night carry you. If you're drawn to these quiet, shadowed nights, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a story when darkness calls. From the moment I was born, my mother wished I was dead. I know that because she made a point of telling me almost every day. "I hate you," she would say. Sometimes she shouted it. Sometimes she whispered it so softly that I almost wished she had shouted. The quiet version always felt more personal, as though the words had been prepared carefully and saved only for me. "I regret having you." Her voice was like acid. Every word landed exactly where she wanted it to land, eating through whatever small piece of confidence I had managed to build since the last time. She rarely entered a room normally when she said those things. Her face would appear around a corner first, sudden and watchful. It was as though she had been standing just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to remind me how much she hated me. I never knew how long she had been listening. Sometimes I would be sitting on the floor with a book, trying to keep quiet, and I would feel that strange pressure at the edge of the room. I would look up. Her face would be there, half hidden behind the wall, already angry, already staring. Every morning, my father left the house for work. I learned the sound of his routine better than I learned most things at school. The bathroom tap, the cupboard opening, the heavy steps across the kitchen, the front door unlocking, his keys, the engine starting outside. Then the car would leave. The house would become silent. That was when she changed. While my father was home, she rarely spoke to me. She moved around the house with a tired expression and kept her hands busy. If he asked whether everything was all right, she always said yes. The moment he left, her face became different. Her eyes seemed brighter, almost alive with resentment. "Stupid child," she would whisper. Then she would come closer. Her words hurt, but her hands hurt too. She slapped me for making noise. She slapped me for being too quiet. She slapped me when I answered questions incorrectly, and she slapped me when I took too long to answer at all. There was never a safe response. If I cried, she told me I was weak. If I did not cry, she told me I was cold and unnatural. I learned that the reason did not matter. She wanted to hurt me first. The explanation came afterward. As I grew older, my mother became thinner, not in the normal way people lose weight. She seemed to be shrinking inward, as though something inside her were pulling every part of her body toward a single dark point. Her shoulders became narrow. Her cheeks sank. The bones in her wrists and hands pushed sharply beneath her skin. She looked brittle, like someone made from material that had dried too long and would crack if touched. Her skin changed too. There were thin red lines across her arms and neck. Sometimes they looked fresh. Other times they were dark and dry, like wounds that had split, healed badly, and opened again. I never saw her treat them. I never saw bandages. I never heard her complain about pain. When she smiled, the expression looked strained. The skin around her mouth pulled too tightly, as if the smile might split her face if it widened any farther. "It should have been you," she often told me. I did not understand what she meant when I was young. I only understood that she believed something bad had happened. And somehow, I was responsible. Every morning I woke with a headache. The pain usually began behind one ear and spread across my skull. It felt as though something poisonous had been dripping into my head throughout the night. I never slept well. Even when the house was silent, I felt watched. I learned to move quietly from room to room. I stepped over the loose floorboard outside my bedroom. I opened doors slowly so the hinges would not complain. I kept my hands close to my body so I would not knock anything over. I avoided corners whenever possible. Corners were where she appeared. Doorways, too. Any place where the wall created a narrow edge felt dangerous. I moved through the house like prey avoiding a predator. I held my breath when I passed her room. I listened before entering the kitchen. I learned to recognize small changes in the air, the kind that warned me she was close even before I saw her. There was always the feeling that she had to be handled carefully. She reminded me of cracked glass. It might remain in one piece if nobody touched it. But one wrong movement could cause it to break apart. As the years passed, she changed in ways that disturbed me more than her anger. Her fingers seemed longer. At first, I thought it was because the rest of her hands had become thinner. But sometimes, when she reached toward me, the fingers looked too long for any human hand. They seemed to continue farther than they should have. Her posture also changed. She no longer stood straight. Her body folded inward, her chest lowered, and her shoulders drawn around her neck. Everything about her became sharp. Bones, fingertips, teeth, the edges of her face. She almost never walked directly into a room. Instead, she appeared at the edges of things, in doorways, behind curtains, between furniture and walls, in the narrow gap between a door and its frame. Her face always appeared first. It would slide slowly into view, already wearing an expression of hate. Then the rest of her followed in pieces. A shoulder, an arm, part of her chest. Sometimes the sections did not seem to connect properly. It looked as though her body had to force itself into a human shape each time she entered, like a snake trying to remember how a person was supposed to move. I told myself it was the light. Our house was old. The rooms were often dark, especially in winter. Shadows stretched strangely across the walls, and the weak bulbs flickered whenever the heating came on. I told myself I was tired. I told myself fear changed the way I saw things. I had been frightened of her for so long that perhaps my mind had stopped seeing her correctly. Once I saw her standing at the far end of the hallway. Most of her body remained in shadow. One shoulder rested against the wall. But her head was wrong. It leaned toward me at an angle that should have been impossible from that distance. Her neck seemed extended, drawn forward, stretched from the darkness, while the rest of her body stayed where it was. Her face was much closer than it should have been. She watched me without blinking. I could not move. Her smile slowly widened when she realized I had noticed. I blinked. The hallway returned to normal. Her body stood where it should have stood. Her head rested naturally above her shoulders. "You ruined everything," she said softly. Then she walked away. Or at least I thought she did. I remember her turning. I remember the shadow changing. But I do not remember hearing footsteps. When I became older, someone said something to me that stayed in my mind. I cannot remember who it was. It may have been a teacher. It could have been a neighbor. Perhaps it was the parent of another child. The face is gone now, but the words remain. "She must be proud of you." I did not correct them. I had learned not to argue when people said kind things about my family. I smiled slightly and allowed the moment to pass. That was how I survived most conversations. I let things pass through me without holding on to them. Later, I tried to picture my mother being proud. I tried to imagine her standing outside our house, speaking to another person. I wanted to hear her using a normal voice. I tried to picture her shopping, walking down the street, sitting in a cafe, or talking to my father when I was not in the room. I could not. Every image disappeared the moment I tried to focus on it. I could imagine the house. I could imagine the hallway, the kitchen, and the dark living room. But I could not place her anywhere outside. I could not imagine her beneath open sky. I could not imagine sunlight touching her face. Even inside the house, I could not picture her doing ordinary things. I could not remember her cooking. I could not remember her eating at the table. I could not remember her watching television or reading a book. There were no complete memories of her, only pieces. A face around a corner, a hand appearing from a doorway, a whisper behind me, the sting of a slap, her mouth close to my ear. It should have been you. Around that time, I began noticing the ceiling. There was a faint mark in the living room, just beyond the brightest reach of the main light. At first, it looked like damp. Old houses often had marks like that. Water entered through the roof, traveled through the wood, and stained the plaster. The mark was pale and narrow. I probably would not have noticed it if I had not spent so much time looking upward to avoid looking toward the doorways. After I noticed it once, I began noticing it constantly. I would enter the living room and find myself standing beneath it. I never decided to go there. My feet simply carried me to that spot. Then I would look up. The mark seemed slightly darker each day. I told myself that was only because I knew where to look. Sometimes I thought it had changed shape. There were thin lines spreading from it, almost like cracks or roots. Whenever I tried to show my father, I stopped before speaking. I do not know why. Perhaps I believed he would not see it. Perhaps I had already learned that some things inside the house belonged only to me. One night, I woke to a sound above my room. It was not loud. A soft dragging noise traveled across the ceiling. Then came a faint creak, like a rope slowly tightening. I remained in bed, staring into the darkness. The sound moved toward the living room. I waited for it to stop. It did not. Eventually, I got up. The hallway was empty. The house felt colder than usual. I walked toward the living room and turned on the lamp. The mark on the ceiling was darker, much darker. It looked almost black at the center. I stood beneath it. My body already knew something was wrong, but my mind refused to understand. For a long time, nothing happened. I began to feel foolish. Then the darkness moved. A shape pressed against the ceiling from above. At first, it was only a slight change in the plaster, like something heavy resting on the other side. Then a thin line appeared. It slowly emerged from the center of the stain. It lengthened toward the floor. The movement was steady. Careful, it looked as though something above the ceiling was being pulled downward by a weight that refused to release it. My stomach turned before I understood what I was seeing. It was skin. A neck extended from the darkness. It was impossibly long and thin. The skin had been pulled tight over it, uneven in places, covered with faint lines that looked like old fractures. The marks circled the neck at strange angles. Some were pale, others were dark. They looked like breaks that had healed badly. More of the neck emerged. It twisted slightly as it lowered. Then my mother's head appeared. It came through slowly. Her hair hung downward. Her face dragged into view beneath the ceiling. She was looking directly at me. The room seemed to shrink around that gaze. My face burned. My fingers became painfully cold. I told my legs to move. They did not. I tried to breathe, but my chest refused to expand. Her neck continued hanging from the darkness above. Her head stopped only a few feet from mine. I hate you, she rasped. Her voice was wrong. It did not travel from her mouth through the room. It pressed directly against my ear. It entered the back of my skull. It moved around my thoughts like water circling a drain. I wish you were dead. I looked up at her. My mind tried desperately to place her somewhere that made sense. A memory at the breakfast table. A birthday. An afternoon in the garden. Any ordinary moment that could prove she had once lived like other people. The harder I searched, the less I found. There were no mornings with her at the table. No evenings sitting together. No walks. No meals. No conversations that were not filled with hatred. There were only corners. Doorways, dark spaces. Half-seen pieces. A face appearing where it should not have been. A hand striking my back. A voice whispering from behind a wall. Something dropped inside me. The feeling was like missing a step in darkness, except the fall continued. I realized I could not remember the last time I had seen my mother move from one room to another. Not properly. Not in a way where one moment connected to the next. She never walked into the kitchen. She was simply there when I entered. She never came down the hallway. Her face appeared at the end of it. She never opened a door. She existed behind it. She had never arrived. She had only ever been there. I stood beneath her hanging head and listened to my own breathing. The house around me felt too quiet. Then I remembered. Not as one complete memory. It returned in pieces, just as she had always appeared. The morning. The strange silence. My father's voice. A door opening. The living room ceiling. The sound the house made before I understood what sounds could mean. Her absence. People speaking softly, the way nobody allowed me into the room. The shape above me that I had not understood because I was too young. My mother had died there. She had taken her own life. The memory had been buried so deeply that it no longer felt like mine. I remembered standing in the hallway while adults moved around me. I remembered someone lifting me and turning my face away. I remembered my father crying. Most of all, I remembered looking past the adults and seeing her feet, still hanging above the floor. She had been gone for years. Every morning insult, every slap, every face around a corner, every time she had whispered that she hated me. Some of those things had happened while she was alive, but not all of them. The understanding moved through me slowly. My mother had not wanted freedom. Looking into her face now, I knew that. There was no peace in her expression. There never had been. Whatever had driven her to death had been the same thing that drove everything else she did. A patient, careful hatred. A hatred shaped specifically for me. She had not left. Maybe she could not. Maybe her anger had become too heavy to disappear. Perhaps hatred had filled so much of her that nothing else remained to pass on. Or perhaps she had been given a choice. That thought was worse. Perhaps something had waited for her beyond death, and she had chosen to stay inside the house. She had chosen the corners, the doorways, the ceiling. She had chosen to remain in the one place where she had been most completely herself, near me. Her mouth moved again. The same words came from it. They would always be the same. I hate you. Her voice scraped across my thoughts. I wish you were dead. I wanted to ask why. I wanted to know what I had done as a newborn child to deserve that hatred. But I already knew there would be no answer. Hatred like hers did not require a reason. It created its own reasons. I did not know whether the thing above me was truly my mother. I did not know whether her spirit remained in the ceiling or whether years of fear had shaped my memories into something I could see. Maybe my mind had built her from every insult, and every blow. Maybe the long neck was only the truth of her death forcing itself back into my memory. Perhaps the corners and doorways had never contained anything. Perhaps I had been frightened for so long that fear had learned to wear her face. I no longer knew whether the difference mattered. If she was a ghost, she had remained with me. If she was only inside my mind, she had remained with me there too. Either way, she was still present, still speaking, still looking down. I remained beneath the ceiling. I do not know how long. The lamp flickered. The radiator made a small clicking sound. Outside, a car passed the house, its headlights moving across the living room wall. For a moment, the light touched my mother's face. The skin looked thin enough to see through. Her eyes remained fixed on me. I should have run. I should have called for my father. I should have left the house and never returned. But I stayed. Part of me was still the child who had learned that movement attracted her attention. Another part of me believed that looking away would allow her to come closer. So I watched her, and she watched me, her head hanging from the darkness, her neck disappearing into the ceiling, her mouth held in that strained smile. I understood then that I had spent my entire life waiting for her to finish what she began. Every quiet step, every held breath, every avoided corner. I had not been hiding from her anger. I had been waiting for her to decide that words were no longer enough. But she did not move closer. She did not need to. She had already filled the house. She had filled every memory I possessed of childhood. She had shaped the way I walked, spoke, slept, and thought. Even after death, she had continued raising me. Perhaps that was what she wanted. Not to kill me, not immediately. She wanted me to remain beneath her. She wanted me to spend my life looking up. Her lips moved once more. I heard the familiar words, but this time they sounded almost distant. I wish you were dead. I tried to answer. My throat tightened. For years, I had believed her voice was the most powerful thing inside me. I had mistaken repetition for truth. I had heard the words so often that they had become part of my own thoughts. Even now, I did not know where her hatred ended and my fear began. Maybe there was no clean line between them anymore. Maybe that was the point. Perhaps the thing hanging above me was real. Perhaps it was only the shape my mind had created from years of cruelty. But cruelty leaves shapes behind. It builds rooms inside you. It waits in corners. It speaks in familiar voices. It appears when the house is quiet. And sometimes, even when the person who hurt you is gone, you still feel their eyes watching from the doorway. My mother remained above me. I remained beneath her. Neither of us moved. The night continued around the house, and I kept looking up. Priya snores. Not loudly. It is only a soft little buzzing sound, like a tiny motor running somewhere behind her front teeth. Before all of this happened, I used to lie beside her at 2 in the morning and listen to that sound. I would look at her face in the weak glow of the string lights and think that I could die happy right there. I need to begin with that, because I want you to understand what I had before everything changed. Priya and I had been together for 8 months. By then, her hoodies had taken over half my drawers, and most of my phone chargers had somehow ended up in her room. Her roommate, Casey, had stopped knocking and waiting on weeknights because she already knew I would be there. Most evenings, she would walk into room 14B and find me curled beside Priya with a textbook open on my lap. I was rarely reading it. That Friday, Casey was away for the weekend visiting her sister, so the room belonged entirely to us. Room 14B had its own small collection of problems. The radiator made loud clanging noises every few minutes, like an old man clearing his throat. The carpet had several stains nobody could explain. One of the drawers beneath Priya's desk refused to close properly, but it felt comfortable. The soft glow from the string lights made the room seem warmer than it really was. Priya and I had hung those lights together in September. We had both stood on her bed, laughing about nothing while I held the wire, and she tried to staple it along the wall. It was not a special memory. Nothing important happened. But when I think about it now, it feels important. It was ordinary, and ordinary felt like home. She felt like home. That night, we put on some stupid romantic comedy at around 10. I cannot remember the title. It was one of those films where two people clearly liked each other, but spent most of the story pretending they did not. At some point, I leaned over and kissed Priya. It was only a quick kiss. She smiled against my lips without opening her eyes. She was already half asleep. By the time the film reached the part where the characters finally admitted they were in love, Priya had completely passed out against my shoulder. The little buzzing snore began near my ear. Warmth spread through my chest, and I smiled so widely that my face hurt. I did not move. My arm had gone numb beneath her, but I did not care. I stared at the ceiling fan and listened to her breathing, thinking about how lucky I was. Then my bladder ruined the moment. It always does. I carefully moved out from beneath her and placed a pillow where my shoulder had been. She shifted toward it without waking. I pulled on one of her gray hoodies before leaving. The smell stopped me for a second. It smelled like her lavender shampoo. I had started buying the same shampoo for myself because I liked the scent so much. I breathed it in and stepped into the hallway wearing only socks. The dormitory lights never fully turned off at night. They dimmed into a strange half-powered state. The low electrical hum they produced was not loud, but if I focused on it, I could feel the sound inside my teeth. I learned during my first year not to pay attention to it. Once you noticed the hum, it became impossible to ignore. The shared bathroom was directly across the hall, only about 8 feet from our door. It sat beside room 14C. That room had been empty for 2 weeks. A girl named Beth used to live there. I did not know her well. She was one of those people I recognized from the hallway and dining hall, but had never truly spoken to. She had left suddenly. Nobody had thought much about it. Students moved out for family problems, changed schools, or transferred all the time. I was not thinking about Beth when I opened the bathroom door. I was thinking about how quickly I could get back to bed. Then I saw the shadow beneath 14C's door. The hallway light should have formed a thin, straight line beneath it. Instead, something blocked the light. The shape looked like 2 feet standing close together on the other side of the door. For a moment, I assumed someone had left a light on inside. Then the truth reached me. Beth was gone. The room had been empty for 2 weeks. I stood with one hand gripping the bathroom doorframe and stared. The shadow did not move. If a person had been standing there, they would have shifted slightly. Even someone trying to remain still would move a little as their weight changed from one foot to the other. This did not. It was completely flat and motionless. It looked less like a shadow and more like someone had cut the shape of 2 feet out of the light. "Okay," I whispered. "That's strange." My own voice sounded too loud in the hallway. "You stayed up too late. That's all." I entered the bathroom and finished faster than I ever had before. When I came back out, I did not look at the door. It took real effort. My eyes kept trying to move toward 14C, but I stared straight ahead until I reached Priya's room. The moment I entered 14B, I locked the door. Priya slept deeply, but small sounds could wake her instantly. The click of the lock made her open her eyes. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I rubbed my arms. It's cold out there. She wrapped one arm around my waist. Within a minute, she was asleep again. I remained awake. I stared at the inside of our door and listened to the hallway. I expected to hear 14C open. I imagined footsteps passing our room. I waited for someone to knock. Nothing happened. Somehow, the silence was worse. By morning, the entire experience felt stupid. That often happens after something frightening. Darkness makes everything seem possible, but sunlight makes you feel embarrassed for being afraid. The dining hall was almost empty. Only the truly hungover students were there, moving slowly through the room and forcing down powdered eggs, cereal, and stale bagels while they waited for their headaches to fade. Priya ate from a bowl of cereal as I told her what I had seen. So you saw a shadow, she said with her mouth half full. Under a door at 1 in the morning. I know how it sounds. It sounds like you watch too many creepy baby monitor videos. That was my favorite thing to watch on YouTube whenever I could not sleep. I watched security camera clips, doorbell footage, and videos where people claimed they saw figures standing near children's beds. Strangely, they usually made me feel safer in my own room. This was different, I said. It didn't move. Shadows usually don't. A person does. I leaned closer. Even if someone stands still, they move a little. This was completely flat, like someone had painted it there. Her smile disappeared. Not because she believed me, but because she understood when I was joking and when I was genuinely frightened. So you think someone is living in 14C? Maybe people hide in empty rooms sometimes. In films, Beth left quickly. You said she did not even take everything. Priya lowered her spoon. For several seconds, she stared at the cinnamon-colored milk in the bowl. She seemed to be deciding how much to tell me. She told the front desk it was a family problem, Priya finally said. But that was not what she told me. I stopped eating. You spoke to her? A few times, when you were in class. Priya looked uncomfortable. She said the room felt strange. What does that mean? She felt like she was not alone. A cold feeling moved across my arms. She said things changed while she was gone. Nothing huge. A drawer she left open would be closed when she returned. Clothes moved. Her desk chair would be facing the wrong way. Priya paused, and her closet door kept closing. Closet doors close. Not that one. She shook her head. The door stuck badly. Beth had to pull it with both hands and throw her whole weight backward to open it. But every time she came back from class, it would be closed again. Did she report it? She told housing. They said the building shifted, doors settled, and drawers moved on uneven floors. The usual answer. Exactly. Priya stirred the cereal without eating. Beth drank a lot of energy drinks. Everyone assumed she was tired and imagining things. Then, 1 week later, she packed 2 bags and left. What about the rest of her belongings? Still there. Her desk, boxes, and some clothes. So someone could have been getting inside the entire time. That is an urban legend. The shadow didn't move, I repeated. That ended the conversation. Priya was quiet during the walk back to the dorm. She had stopped making jokes. That afternoon, we told Sujin. Sojin was our resident assistant. Most RAs only cared when someone played music too loudly or broke a rule that created paperwork. Sojin was different. She took the job seriously. She could be strict, but if someone needed help, she tried to give it. She listened without interrupting. When I finished describing the shadow and what Priya had told me about Beth, Sojin stood. Show me the room. In the afternoon light, 14C looked harmless. It was the same beige door as every other room. A cheap plastic name holder remained attached to the front, with Beth written on masking tape. Sujin crouched and examined the gap beneath it. "There's no light on inside," she said. I would see it. She stood and knocked 3 times. "Hello? This is Sujin, the Ra. I'm doing a wellness check. Is anyone inside?" There was no answer. We waited. The hallway felt strangely quiet, even though students were moving around nearby. Sojin sighed. "I'm opening the door. If anyone is inside and does not want to be found, say something now." She inserted the master key. The lock clicked. Then she pushed the door open. The room looked abandoned. Dust covered Beth's desk, except for several clear marks near the edge. I moved closer. 5 long lines had been dragged through the dust. They resembled finger marks, fresh ones. It looked like someone had been feeling across the desk in darkness. The closet stood wide open. According to Sujin, it should not have been open. That was the same door Beth had struggled with. Only a few wire hangers remained inside. One hanger moved gently. It swung back and forth as if someone had touched it only seconds earlier. The room was freezing. The radiator clanged against the wall. Its dial had been turned to the highest setting, but there was almost no warmth. It felt as if something inside the room was consuming the heat as quickly as the radiator produced it. "There is no one here," Sujin said. She was already stepping backward. "I'm reporting this. Go to your room and lock, wait." I was looking at the floor beneath the open door. The hallway light now passed normally into the room. Something about the position of the door bothered me. When I saw the shadow, the door was closed, I said. Both of them watched me. That means whoever made it was standing directly against the door. "Okay," Sujin said carefully. "When you knocked and announced that you were opening it, they did not move." Priya looked toward the door. "If you are standing against the door and someone says they are about to open it, you move," I continued. "You step back or hide. Unless," Priya began, "unless you wanted to be on the side where the door would hide you when it opened." All 3 of us turned toward the same place. The door had opened inward until it rested almost flat against the wall. There was a narrow space behind it. At the bottom, something was visible, the front of a shoe. It was a dirty yellow-white color. It had no laces, and the sole was peeling away. The material looked thin and worn. It looked like a shoe that had been used for years without ever being removed. So Jin shoved the door hard against the wall. The shoe disappeared. Nothing stood behind it. There was only the wall, the hinges, and a dark smear at head height. 5 narrow lines ran downward through the smear. It looked as though someone had pressed a hand against the wall and slowly dragged it down. "We need actual police," Sujin whispered. Her voice shook. "Not campus security." The police took 40 minutes to arrive. We waited inside 14B with the door locked and Priya's desk chair wedged beneath the handle. We knew the chair would not stop anyone serious, but it made us feel slightly safer. "The shoe was there," Priya repeated. "I saw it. I know, it was real, I know." And then it wasn't. I held her hands and tried to calm her, even though I was no calmer than she was. When the officers arrived, they searched 14C. Then they searched 14B and 14D, the rooms on either side. After that, they searched the entire floor, door by door, as though looking for an escaped prisoner. They found someone in 14D. The student living there was a sophomore named Ren. She had slept through her morning class. When the police began knocking, she thought she was in trouble, so she hid at first. I barely knew her. She was simply another face from the floor. Ren was fine. Her closet was not. The closet in 14D shared a wall with the closet in 14C. Behind a section of clothing Wren had not touched for weeks, the police discovered a hole. It was large enough for a person. The plaster and drywall had been broken from the other side and pushed into Wren's closet. Someone had dug through from 14C. It must have taken a long time. They would have needed to move slowly and quietly enough that Wren did not notice. Wren slept with headphones, which probably helped hide the sound. A thin person who was not afraid of darkness, dust, or tight spaces could have moved between both rooms through the wall. The space smelled strange. It was faintly sweet. People had noticed the smell before, but everyone assumed it came from the old building. Nobody had worried about it. The police found objects hidden between the walls. They had been placed there carefully, as if someone wanted to keep them but could not risk leaving them inside a room. I did not see most of what they recovered. I heard details later. There were some of Beth's belongings. There were also things that had belonged to other people. At one point, I heard an officer use the word remains. The way he said it made the hallway become silent. What I did see was the girl. Two officers brought her out of Wren's closet. She was not wearing handcuffs because nobody understood who she was yet. She did not speak. She did not react when they asked questions. Days later, the police apparently discovered her name, but she never responded to it. There was no record of her living in the dorm. She did not appear on any university list. She looked like someone who had been forgotten inside the building. Her hair was tangled across her face. Her clothing hung loosely from her body, and her ribs were visible beneath it. Her fingers were unnaturally long. The nails had grown into thick yellow curves. Everything about her looked unfocused and distant, except her eyes. Her eyes were clear. As the officers walked her past our open door, she looked directly at me. Her lips moved. No sound came out. But I knew what she said. Thank you. Then, the officers took her around the corner. I stood with one hand pressed against my chest. I did not know what to say. I wished that had been the end. Housing moved us out of 14B that evening. It is only a precaution, the woman kept saying. She repeated it so many times that the words lost their meaning. Priya and I were placed in a guest suite on the 4th floor. It was meant for visiting parents and important guests. The room had a real deadbolt. It was the first deadbolt I had seen in a dormitory during my 2 years at the university. We did not sleep. We sat together on the couch with every light turned on. Priya held my hand so tightly that her nails left small white half-moons in my skin. I did not notice them until morning. At around 2 o'clock, someone knocked on the door. 3 soft knocks, almost polite. Priya's fingers tightened around mine. Don't, she whispered. Marla, don't. I did not stand. I only looked beneath the door. We were on a different floor, in a different room, behind a different door. But the shadow was there. 2 feet stood close together on the other side. The same flat, motionless shape blocked the hallway light. Priya, I whispered. Look, she followed my eyes. Her entire body became rigid. That's impossible. Her voice barely came out. We're on another floor. I watched the police take that girl away. The 3 knocks came again. Then the shadow changed. The shape moved without the feet moving. Its edges softened and stretched. For a moment, it no longer resembled feet. It looked like hands, 2 palms pressed flat against the floor, with fingers spread toward the gap beneath the door. The fingers were too long. They curved slightly at the tips, like plants that had grown in darkness for years without ever being cut. Priya screamed. I had never heard a sound like it come from her. There were no words inside it, only fear. The moment she screamed, the shadow snapped back into the shape of 2 feet. Then it vanished. The hallway light passed cleanly beneath the door again. We watched the gap until sunrise. Nothing else happened. That somehow frightened me more. I felt that whatever had been outside could have done something else. It had simply decided not to. At around 4 in the morning, Priya told me about something from her childhood. We were sitting beneath the bright lights, staring at nothing. I used to feel something in my room, she said quietly. What do you mean? A presence. She pulled her knees closer. When I was little, I always felt like something was standing in the corner, beneath the bed or behind the door. Did you ever see it? No, she shook her head. I told my parents. They checked beneath the bed and inside the closet. They would say, see, nothing is there. Go back to sleep. She swallowed. Eventually, I stopped telling them because it never went away. I realized it was not somewhere they could check. Where was it? Somewhere you would not look. I said nothing. She needed to continue. I stopped feeling it when I was about 12 or 13. I thought it had been a childhood fear, just my brain making things in the dark. She stared at the door. I had not felt it again until tonight. Until the shadow appeared? Until the shadow. She looked at me. It did not feel new, Mar. That is what scares me. It felt exactly the same. Her voice trembled, like it remembered me. I held her hand. There was nothing useful I could say. During the following days, homicide detectives questioned everyone on our floor. They asked about sounds, smells, open doors, damaged walls, and strange things people had explained away. Once someone finally asked the questions out loud, nearly everyone had a story. Wren had heard scratching inside her wall for months. It happened several times each week. She mentioned it once while speaking to her mother, but her mother said old buildings often had mice. Wren accepted that explanation because it was easier. A girl 2 doors away said she had woken several times to find her bedroom door open. She had slept with the door closed since childhood and claimed she could not sleep otherwise. Each time, she told herself she must have forgotten. Someone on the 3rd floor reported that the bathroom mirror had once fogged even though nobody had taken a shower. When she wiped the glass, she saw a handprint. Not on the mirror. Behind it. That should have been impossible because the mirror appeared to be fixed directly against the wall. When maintenance removed it, they discovered a gap behind it. 4 inches of empty space that did not appear on the building plans. 4 inches. That was all the space something needed. After that, the detectives stopped sharing information with us. So-Jin told us one final detail 2 nights later. Her voice shook so badly that I barely recognized it. The original plans for the dormitory showed a service corridor running through the walls of the 2nd and 3rd floors. It had been designed for maintenance access. The corridor had supposedly been sealed decades earlier by brick walls at both ends. According to the university, nobody had entered it in almost 50 years. But it was not empty, and the original drawings were incomplete. The hidden passage did not only cross the 2nd and 3rd floors. It continued through the entire height of the building, all 7 floors. I immediately thought about the guest suite. The shadow had appeared beneath a door on the 4th floor. That room was supposed to have nothing to do with 14C. I never asked whether the 4th floor closets, bathrooms, or walls connected to the same corridor. I did not need to. I already knew the answer. Most students were moved out of the building. We were placed in a newer dormitory on the other side of campus. It was made from concrete and glass. The hallway lights used motion sensors. They turned on completely the moment anyone stepped outside. There was no half-light, no dim electrical hum. I noticed that within seconds of entering the new building. I have never taken it for granted. Casey transferred to another school permanently. She never returned for her belongings. She paid someone to move them. Nobody asked her why. The old building remained under investigation. More than a month later, it was still surrounded by construction fencing covered with green mesh. A couple of weeks ago, I walked past it. I told myself I only wanted to see the building during daylight. I wanted to prove it was nothing more than concrete, brick, glass, and old pipes. As I passed the fence, I heard sounds from inside. They traveled through the mesh and walls, slow tapping, not random building noises. The taps came in groups and then paused. It sounded like someone moving through the walls, testing each section, searching for a thin place. I kept walking. I have not returned. Priya and I spend most nights together in our new room. We lock the door and stay close, but we rarely discuss what happened. There are parts of the story I still cannot stop thinking about. The police found remains. Plural, that means there had been others before Beth. How far back did it go? 20 years? 50 years since the corridor was supposedly sealed? Longer? What if the hidden corridor was only one part of something larger that nobody had discovered yet? The girl found inside 14D's closet still had not spoken the last time I heard anything. I continue thinking about the words she silently formed when she looked at me. Thank you. I do not know what she was thanking me for. Perhaps I was simply the first face she saw that did not belong to whatever had kept her inside the walls. But the part that truly keeps me awake is that the girl could not have made the first shadow. When we found her, she had been living in the walls for months, possibly longer. She must have already been weak and hidden by that Friday night. The shape beneath 14C's door did not behave like a human being. It did not sway. It did not shift its weight. It remained completely flat and still. And the thing outside the fourth floor guest suite was not human either. The feet became hands. Those long fingers stretched toward us beneath the door. Priya says it felt like the same presence from her childhood. Something that had been waiting. Something that remembered her. I check beneath doors now. Every night. The bathroom door. The closet. The entrance to our room. Sometimes I check doors that have no possible reason to frighten me. I used to believe there could not be anything behind them. I believed that until the night I saw the shadow. Priya checks too. Neither of us ever agreed to do it. We have never discussed it. It has simply become part of our routine. Maybe it is habit. Maybe it is survival. Every night, the light beneath each door is clear. No feet. No hands. No motionless black shapes. Everything looks empty and normal. Every night. So far. Sorry to pause for just a moment. If this is your first time here, welcome. I hope you're enjoying the calm so far. If you'd like more nights like this, true stories, gentle rain, no interruptions, please subscribe to Lacuna Noir. It really helps me keep creating these peaceful experiences for you. And tap the bell so you're here every time a new story arrives in the dark. Now, back to the story. It was 10:06 p.m. when I walked into Walmart. The store was enormous, but at that hour it felt strangely empty. My footsteps echoed across the polished floor, and the rows of white lights above me hummed softly. The parking lot outside had been almost deserted too, with only a few cars scattered beneath the tall lamps. That was exactly why I liked shopping late. During the day, the place was packed with families, crying children, people blocking entire aisles with their carts, and employees trying to restock shelves while customers pushed past them. I hated crowds. I hated having strangers close enough to touch me. The store did not close for another 2 hours, so I had plenty of time. I pushed my cart slowly through the aisles, keeping away from the few other late-night shoppers. Most of them seemed tired and distracted, moving quietly beneath the fluorescent lights. I had not picked up much yet. I was crouched in front of the Pop-Tarts, trying to decide between strawberry and blueberry, when something crashed into the cart beside me. The metal frame slammed into my shoulder. I jumped up, already angry. The store was almost empty. There was no excuse for someone to walk directly into me. "Can't you see I'm standing here?" I snapped. A woman stood beside my cart. She wore an old bathrobe that was torn along the sleeves and stained near the bottom. She was barefoot. Her feet were gray with dirt, and her toenails were long and broken. Her tangled hair hung around her face. It might once have been black, but now it was mixed with gray. Her eyes were the first thing I truly noticed. They were pale and cloudy, with a thick gray color covering them. She looked blind. "Help me," she said. She stared directly at me. For several seconds, I could not answer. What was a barefoot woman doing inside Walmart in a bathrobe? How had she reached me without my hearing her? And if she was blind, how had she found me so easily? "Are you all right?" I finally asked. "Help me," she repeated. "I need to get out of here." She moved closer. Her hands reached into the air, searching for something to hold. I stepped back. "Ma'am, are you hurt? I need to get out." Her voice became louder. Her arms moved more quickly, sweeping from side to side. I looked down both ends of the aisle. There was nobody there. No employee, no other shopper. The store had seemed quiet before. Now it felt empty in a way that was difficult to explain. "Okay," I said. "Calm down. We'll find someone who can help you." I reached toward her carefully. "Stop moving your arms. I'm right here." The moment my fingers touched her sleeve, she moved. She was much faster than a blind old woman should have been. Her hand closed around my wrist. I froze. She tightened her grip and drove her long nails into my skin. Pain shot through my arm. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I shouted. "Let go." I pulled back, but she was surprisingly strong. Her filthy nails cut deeper into my forearm. I shoved her with my free hand. She moved back one step, but did not fall. I tore my arm away and stumbled toward the shelves. Blood appeared across the scratches. "You're going to leave me here, too," she screamed. I stared at her. "You're going to leave me here, too, Jonathan." My name seemed to echo through the aisle. I pressed one hand against the cuts. Blood moved between my fingers. The woman smiled. Her teeth were dark, broken, and rotting. "What did you call me?" She laughed softly. "You won't leave me here, will you? We can go out together. How do you know my name?" "Jonathan," she said again. "Help me." Her eyes remained cloudy, but there was no sign of blindness in the way she watched me. She knew exactly where I stood. Every time I moved, her head followed. A drop of blood fell from my arm and struck the gray floor. "Why are you trying to leave me?" she asked. She took another step. I backed into the shelf behind me. Boxes and plastic packages pressed into my shoulders. "What do you want?" She continued smiling. "Leave me alone," I shouted. "Someone help me." I looked toward both ends of the aisle again. Nothing. The bright store stretched around us, silent and still. The woman came closer. I had nowhere else to move. So I ran. I pushed past her and sprinted toward the front of the store. My shoes struck the tile loudly. I kept one hand pressed over my bleeding arm while the other moved beside me for balance. The exit should have been close. I had shopped there for years. I knew the layout. The main doors were directly beyond the registers. But after running for what felt like several minutes, I was still surrounded by shelves. The aisles did not end. The exit sign glowed far ahead, but instead of becoming closer, it seemed to move farther away. The store was stretching. I slowed and looked around. Cereal boxes, drinks, canned food, and cleaning products stood in perfect lines. Every shelf was fully stocked. "What is happening?" I whispered. I looked behind me. The woman was gone. There were only endless aisles beneath the white lights. "Hello?" I shouted. "Can anyone hear me?" My voice traveled through the building. It slowly faded. Then I heard the hum of the lights, the low ticking of pipes, and another sound. Bare feet slapping against tile. Fast, I turned around. There was nobody behind me. The sound came from somewhere between the shelves. I spun in a circle, trying to understand where it was coming from. Nothing moved. My mouth had gone dry. My heart struck painfully against my chest. This isn't possible. Maybe I had run in the wrong direction. Maybe panic had confused me. But I had been visiting this store for years. It was large, but not endless. Where were the employees? Where were the other customers? The slapping sound came again. Closer this time. I turned and ran in the opposite direction. The shelves continued without end. The products changed as I passed, but after several minutes I began to feel as though I was seeing the same things repeatedly. The same bread, the same canned vegetables, the same display of soft drinks. I finally stopped between two aisles and bent forward, gasping. The bright packages around me looked almost alive. Hundreds of colorful boxes faced me from the shelves. That was when I noticed the man. He stood nearby, calmly examining jars of pickles. He wore a dark, well-fitted suit. His hair was neatly combed, and glasses rested on his nose. An empty shopping basket hung from one hand. Relief moved through me. Another person. Someone normal. "Sir." I hurried toward him. He jumped slightly at the sound of my voice and looked around. "Please," I said. "You have to help me." He stared at me carefully. "There's a woman in the store. She attacked me. I can't find the exit." I held up my injured arm. Blood covered my skin. "This place doesn't end. I've been running, but every aisle leads to another one." The man gave me the suspicious look people give someone who has started shouting on a train. "I need to get out," I continued. "Please tell me where the doors are." "Excuse me," he said calmly. "I need help with something." He held up the pickle jar. "How many whole cucumbers would you say are inside?" I stared at him. "What?" He turned the jar in his hand. "I'm trying to decide whether it is worth the price." "Didn't you hear me?" I pointed at my arm. "I'm bleeding." The man leaned closer, but instead of looking at my wound, he looked at my chest. "Frank," he said, sounding offended, "how can you speak to a customer that way while you are working? Frank?" He pointed toward me. "You work here." I looked down. A blue Walmart vest covered my shirt. A plastic name tag was attached to it. "Frank," I touched it. The vest felt real. I had not been wearing it when I entered. "What is this?" When I looked up again, the man was already walking away. I had not heard him move. "Wait." I ran after him, pulling off the vest. He turned at the end of the aisle. I followed. When I reached the main walkway, he had vanished. There was no sound of footsteps, no sign of him entering another aisle. I threw the vest onto the floor. Then I saw the woman. She stood far down the main corridor. Her robe hung loosely around her thin body. Her cloudy eyes faced me. She smiled. Neither of us moved. Then she suddenly ran between two shelves and disappeared. She was still following me. I turned in the opposite direction and began moving quickly. The floor sounded the same beneath every step. The fluorescent lights flickered above me. I had just stopped to look behind me when the store intercom chimed. A woman's calm voice came through the speakers. "Frank, please come to Register 3." I looked up. "I repeat, Frank, please come to Register 3." The message ended. The name meant nothing to me. I was Jonathan. I was 27 years old. I did not work there. I had no idea how long I had been trapped inside the store. I passed an aisle filled with drinks and grabbed a can of Dr. Pepper. I opened it and drank while walking. The cold liquid helped calm my throat. When I reached the end of the aisle, I stopped. The woman was there. She stood less than 20 feet away. She was no longer smiling. Her expression was angry. For one strange moment, I felt like a child caught stealing. I dropped the can and ran. I passed one aisle and turned into another. She was there again. She could not have reached it before me. I stopped. Behind me, the old woman charged. I ran back the way I had come. My foot struck a crate of soft drinks, sending bottles across the floor. They rolled beneath the shelves. The woman did not slow down. Her bare feet slapped against the tile behind me. I entered the cleaning products aisle. She caught me. Her nails dragged across my back. I fell forward into a display of bleach bottles. Plastic containers crashed around me. I rolled over. She climbed on top of me. Her fists and nails struck my arms and face. I protected my head as well as I could, but the blows came too quickly. During one opening, she scratched the right side of my face. Her nails cut from my forehead to my cheek. I screamed. I forced my body upward and threw her off. She landed beside the fallen bottles. I tried to stand. Her hand grabbed my leg. The nails entered my calf. I shouted and kicked backward. My heel struck her face. Her grip released. I stood and limped away. When I looked back, she was sitting on the floor. Her tangled hair covered part of her face. She was smiling. It looked as though she had finally punished me for something. I continued through the aisles. Blood ran down my leg. Pain moved across my back and face. I did not understand the woman. She wanted me trapped there, but she also hated me for being there. The store seemed to make distance meaningless. Every time I ran away from her, I somehow moved closer. I returned to the wide main aisle. Shelves continued in both directions. Then I remembered my shopping cart. My bag was inside it. My phone, wallet, and car keys were all there. I had no idea where I had left it. For the first time since the attack, something seemed to go in my favor. I found the medicine section. I collected bandages, disinfectant, gauze, and painkillers. I treated the injuries as well as I could. My hands shook throughout the process. When I finished, I sat against the shelf. Empty packets and wrappers surrounded me. The lights continued humming. The air conditioning rattled overhead. My eyes started closing. A child's voice woke me. "Why did you eat so much?" "Dad is going to be angry." "Leave me alone," a boy answered. I forced myself up. The children might know where the exit was. I moved into the next aisle. A red-haired boy sat on the floor among dozens of sweet wrappers. He was chubby and freckled, with chocolate around his mouth. A blonde girl stood nearby in a purple dress. She held a long-eared rabbit toy against her chest. Both children stared at me. "My stomach hurts," the boy complained. "Hello," I said. "Where did you come from?" The girl looked guilty. I told him not to eat so much. "Snitch," the boy said, throwing a wrapper toward her. "Stop." I limped closer. "How did you get into the store?" "We came with you, Dad," the girl answered. Cold moved through my body. "What did you call me?" She looked confused. "Dad, I'm not your father." The children looked at each other. Their expressions made it clear that they believed I was. I glanced down at my hand. A wedding ring was on my finger. I pulled it off. The skin beneath it was pale, as though I had worn it for years. I was not married. I had no children. I was Jonathan, 27 years old. Single, I repeated those facts silently. The girl looked up at me. Are we going home now? Maybe the word left my mouth automatically. Have either of you seen an old woman? She's wearing a robe. Both shook their heads. The girl reached for my hand. Her small fingers felt warm. For the first time since entering the endless store, I felt calm. The boy raised one sticky hand. Help me up. I pulled him to his feet. Do you know where the exit is? The door, the girl answered as though it were obvious. We began walking together. I held both their hands. The aisles repeated around us. Even though I knew they were not my children, I did not want to release them. They felt real, human. Then the girl saw the toy section. Toys. She pulled away and ran. Wait. My injured leg slowed me. The boy remained attached to my other hand. My stomach hurts, he complained. Come on. He suddenly collapsed. He curled around his stomach, groaning. The girl was already disappearing between shelves filled with dolls and colorful boxes. I lifted the boy. He was heavy, but I carried him against my chest and followed her. Come back, I shouted. I entered the toy aisles. The girl was nowhere in sight. A happy voice came from somewhere nearby. Ariel. It sounded only a few rows away. The boy suddenly vomited across my shoulder. Warm brown liquid ran down my neck and shirt. I lowered him to the floor and sat him against the shelf. Stay here. I gave him a large lion toy to wipe his mouth. I'll come back. I followed the girl's voice. I searched until my throat hurt. I called out repeatedly. There was no answer. When I returned, the boy was gone. The lion remained on the shelf. I wandered through the toy section until I found the rabbit the girl had been carrying. I picked it up. The children had disappeared. The loss hurt more than it should have. I had known them for only minutes. I did not believe they were really mine. Still, I felt as though I had failed them. I continued walking with the rabbit in my hand. Time stopped meaning anything. I ate when I became hungry and drank from the shelves. I returned to the medicine section whenever the bandages needed changing. I found clean clothes and replaced the vomit-covered shirt. I began believing I would spend the rest of my life inside that store. Then, I saw the blonde woman. She stood between shelves, reading the label on a can of tomatoes. Her long hair rested over her shoulders. She had bright green eyes and a gentle face. She looked up at me. Her expression changed immediately. She smiled like she had found someone she loved. She said, I did not understand the words, but I walked toward her. Something pulled me forward. She pressed the container into my hand and spoke again. I stared at her face. Her perfume smelled like peach flowers. I don't understand. She answered in the foreign language. Then, something changed. I looked at the object in my hands. It was no longer a can. It was a glass jar filled with whole tomatoes. The woman continued speaking. This time I understood her. Did you even look at it? I stared at her. How can I understand you? The lights flickered. For less than a second, the Walmart disappeared. I saw a smaller store. It was gray, with fewer products, but it somehow felt warmer and more real. Then, Walmart returned. Artem, the woman said. What is wrong with you? Artem, the name felt familiar. It was not mine. How do I get out? Out of where? She looked concerned. If you have started drinking again, I swear I will never let you forget it. She took my arm. Come on. I still need a few things. I allowed her to lead me. Her body felt warm beside mine. She looked at me with love. For several minutes, I forgot the endless aisles. Then the intercom sounded. Jonathan, my own voice said through the speakers, do not go deeper. You will not find the exit that way. I stopped. The blonde woman pulled against my arm. What is it? I held her shoulders. I looked into her green eyes. "I'm sorry," I said. "I can't go with you." She looked confused. "This isn't the direction I'm supposed to take." "Artem, what are you saying?" She had not heard the intercom. Something inside me felt as though it belonged to her. Not Jonathan. Someone else. "Artem," I kissed her. The kiss was slow and gentle. It felt like a goodbye from a life I did not remember. While I held her, her body began to fade. Her arms disappeared beneath my hands. Her lips dissolved. The smell of peach flowers weakened. Then I was alone. I could no longer remember why the blonde woman had mattered. I continued walking. This time, I carried a pipe wrench from the hardware section. I believed the old woman was the only way out. I searched every aisle. She remained hidden. My anger grew. Eventually, I entered an aisle filled with crisps and lost control. I swung the wrench into the shelves. Bags burst open. Crisps covered the floor. I destroyed everything I could reach. Then, I dropped to my knees. When I looked up, the woman stood at the end of the aisle. She smiled. "Come here," I screamed. I ran toward her. She turned and fled. I chased her. Whenever I reached the place where she had been standing, she appeared somewhere else. She watched me from the end of another aisle and laughed. I chased her again. The game continued. I stopped thinking. I only wanted to catch her and kill her. While entering the baking aisle, I tripped. I fell onto the floor and rolled onto my back. The woman approached. Her dirty feet stopped beside my head. "Jonathan," she said, "are we finished playing?" I felt the pipe wrench near my hand. "Come on," she teased. "Catch me." I grabbed the wrench and swung. It struck her knee. She screamed and fell. I stood and hit her leg again. Blood struck the floor. "Let me go." I brought the wrench down on her thigh. She raised one arm. The metal broke her wrist. She screamed beneath me. For the first time, I was the monster standing over her. "What are you doing, Frank?" a man said behind me. It was the well-dressed shopper. I turned. No one was there. The aisle had changed. I was surrounded by sweets and chocolate. When I faced the woman again, she had disappeared. The two children stood in her place. The boy protected the little girl with his body. Both were crying. "Dad," the girl whispered. "Why are you doing this?" I stepped back. "I'm not your father." I swung the wrench. It passed through the children. Their bodies moved like smoke. The lights flickered. The store changed into the smaller gray shop. The blonde woman lay on the floor. Blood came from her nose. A dark bruise covered one side of her face. She raised her arms to protect herself. "Artem, please," she begged. "Don't hurt me." The wrench was raised above my head. "You're not real." I swung. The tool passed through her body. She dissolved. The wrench struck the floor. The stone cracked. I hit it again. A section broke away. There was darkness beneath the store. Not dirt, not pipes. An endless black space. I threw a piece of broken tile into the hole. No sound returned. The stone disappeared. I lowered one finger into the darkness. Something grabbed me. I felt a violent pull. The blackness swallowed my body. It felt like floating in deep water. I could see the opening above me for a short time, glowing like a distant window. Then, darkness covered it. I kicked and moved my arms, but there was nothing solid around me. I was falling and floating at the same time. Then I struck a floor. The landing did not hurt. I lay on a cold, smooth surface. I could not see anything. My hands moved across polished tiles. I stood and walked carefully through the darkness. I called for help. Only an echo answered. After a long time, I heard a woman speaking. Her voice sounded distant and distorted. "Sweetheart, I told you no." Not that one either. I moved toward it. The voice became clearer. I walked into something metal. Shelves. I felt plastic packages and boxes. "Wait, sweetheart," the woman said. Then she spoke directly to me. "Excuse me, sir, are you okay?" Soft fingers touched my arm. I struck them away in fear. "Are you crazy?" the woman shouted. "What is wrong with you?" "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Please help me." My vision returned. It was 10:06 p.m. I stood in the Walmart parking lot. My hands rested on a shopping cart. I was one step away from entering through the automatic doors. The woman I had struck was standing nearby, holding the hand of a small child. She stared at me angrily. I looked at the store entrance. The doors opened. Bright aisles waited beyond them. I pulled my bag from the cart and placed it over my shoulder. Then I walked away toward the parked cars. I did not know what had happened. I did not know whether I had escaped. My arm was no longer scratched. My face and leg were uninjured. There was no wedding ring, no blue vest, no blood, but the long-eared rabbit toy was still inside my bag. I do not remember putting it there. I stood beneath the parking lot lights and stared at the store. People moved normally behind the windows. Employees pushed carts. Customers entered and left. Everything looked real. But I could not trust it. Maybe this was the world I had started in. Maybe it was another life. Another aisle. Another department built to look like a parking lot. I walked toward my car, repeating the same facts under my breath. My name is Jonathan. I am 27. I am not married. I do not have children. I do not work at Walmart. I repeated them until the words stopped sounding true. Then the store intercom crackled behind me. I was standing outside, but I heard it clearly. "Frank, please come to Register 3. I did not turn around. I continued walking. Somewhere inside my bag, a small child began to laugh. Something took me from my home and killed me every day for more than 3 years. I am writing this because every psychiatrist I have spoken to believes I am delusional. They agree that something terrible happened to me. They believe I was kidnapped, drugged, abused, or held somewhere against my will, but they do not believe the place I remember was real. According to them, my mind created it to protect me from whatever actually happened. They say I disconnected from reality. They say the creatures were symbols. They say the deaths were memories of torture, that my brain changed into something easier to understand. There was nothing easy about it. Nothing I saw was imaginary. Nothing I felt was created by my mind. I remember every broken bone, every burn, every cut, every moment when my body understood it was dying. I remember what came after death, too. I do not know why I was chosen. I do not know how I attracted its attention. I do not know whether the things that took me are finished with me. Every day I live with the fear that the air around me will change again and I will be pulled back. So I am writing everything down. Maybe it will warn someone. Maybe it will only serve as a statement from a victim nobody believes. On my 21st birthday, I disappeared for 3.5 years. I only know the exact length because other people have told me hundreds of times. Doctors tested my blood, scanned my brain, examined my bones, and pushed so many needles into my body that I joked I had made voodoo dolls jealous. Nobody understood where I had been. I did not understand either, but I knew what had happened there. It began at around 3 in the afternoon. I had been waiting for that birthday for months because I was finally old enough to drink legally with my friends. They had always made fun of me for being the youngest person in the group. Whenever we went anywhere involving alcohol, I became the driver. Everyone else drank while I stayed sober and carried them into their houses at the end of the night. But on my birthday, it was supposed to be my turn. I planned to drink enough that I would forget how to walk. My best friend lived only a few blocks away. I decided to walk to his house before we went out. He had promised to be the designated driver for once. I remember leaving my home feeling excited. The weather was warm, and the afternoon sun reflected from the parked cars. I had music playing through one earbud as I walked. Everything was normal until I turned the corner onto my friend's street. The world changed. The first thing I noticed was the air. It became thick. Breathing suddenly felt like trying to pull air through wet cloth. I stopped walking and took a deep breath, but almost nothing entered my lungs. The houses around me began to shake. Not physically. Their shapes moved like reflections on disturbed water. The pavement seemed to rise and fall beneath my feet. Parked cars stretched and bent before returning to normal. I pulled out the earbud and looked around. The air itself appeared to shimmer. At first, I thought it was a heat mirage. Then the entire street began to move. It felt as though the world had turned into liquid and I had fallen beneath its surface. I tried to breathe again. Nothing. My chest tightened. I clawed at my throat as though something were wrapped around it. The oxygen seemed to leave the area all at once. I gasped and stumbled forward. Nausea struck me so violently that I fell to my knees. I gripped my stomach while the street spun around me. The sunlight faded. The houses became dark shapes. I tried to call for help, but I could not force enough air through my throat to make a sound. Then everything disappeared. When I woke, I was no longer outside. I was inside a room. Every surface appeared to be made from polished steel. The walls reflected light, but I could not see any lamps or other light sources. There were no windows and no visible doors. A long metal bench stood against the far wall. It was large enough for 3 people, but there was no one else there. I stood slowly. My head hurt, and my stomach was still unsettled. I checked my clothes and pockets. My phone, wallet, and keys were gone. There were no marks on my body. I walked around the room, pressing my hands against the walls and searching for an opening. Nothing moved. There were no handles, cracks, vents, cameras, or signs that another person had ever entered. I shouted, "Hello?" My voice echoed. Nobody answered. Where am I? Still nothing. Then another wave of nausea struck me. It was the same feeling I had experienced on the street. The room spun. I pressed both hands against the wall and fought to remain conscious. One section of the polished metal opened silently. The wall did not slide aside. It seemed to separate like liquid, creating a doorway where none had existed before. 2 figures entered. They looked human from a distance. They had 2 arms, 2 legs, and heads above their shoulders. I tried to focus on their faces. The darkness reached me before I could see them clearly. The next time I woke, I was lying on my back. An intense white light burned directly into my eyes. I tried to raise my arm and cover my face, but my wrist did not move. Both hands had been secured beside me. My legs were restrained too. I began pulling against the straps. Nothing loosened. Something covered my mouth. I tried to shout, but the sound came out weak and trapped. Panic filled me. I pulled harder until the restraints cut into my skin. "Relax," a voice said. It came from somewhere outside my vision. "We understand that you are confused. The confusion is part of the experiment." I continued struggling. The voice was cold and calm. "This process will move more smoothly if you relax. We cannot accurately study your stress response if you begin the experiment under extreme stress." That sentence made no sense to me. If they had strapped me to a table, how did they expect me to remain calm? A shape entered my vision. At first, I thought I was looking at a person wearing a mask. Then it moved closer. It had no face. Its head was made from smooth, pale flesh. A long, thin opening ran vertically from the top to the bottom. 5 fleshy tendrils grew from the crown of its head. Each tendril ended in a small, dark hole. There were no visible eyes, no nose, no mouth. The creature leaned over me as though it were examining an object. "This will be painful," the voice said inside my mind. I understood then that it was not speaking through the room. The words were appearing directly inside my thoughts. "However, it is important that you answer honestly. Refusing to cooperate will increase the length of the testing process. We recommend compliance." There was a click. The object covering my mouth moved away. I immediately screamed. "What are you? Where am I? Let me go." The creature did not react. "I did not agree to this." "Most test subjects do not volunteer," it replied. Its voice remained inside my head. "Let me go," I begged. "Please, I won't tell anyone. We can forget this happened." "That would produce incomplete results." It tilted its head. "We recommend preparing yourself. However, we do not know how effectively you can prepare." Machinery began humming beneath me. My right arm moved. I was not controlling it. The device holding me extended the arm until it was level with my shoulder. It moved the joint slowly in different directions, testing how far it could bend. "What are you doing?" The creature remained still. The machine pushed my arm downward. I felt pressure in my shoulder and elbow. Then the bone snapped. The sound was loud. My arm bent in the wrong direction, and a broken piece of bone tore through the skin. Pain exploded through my body. I screamed until my throat burned. My thoughts disappeared beneath the agony. "Explain your current experience," the creature demanded. I could not answer. I only screamed. "Using a scale from 1 to 10, rate the pain." The question repeated inside my mind. I fought for breath. The broken arm shook uncontrollably. Eventually, shock created a small space between me and the pain. 11, I gasped. "It's an 11. I began crying. "Is that what you wanted? You broke my arm. You have your information. Let me go." The creature tilted its head again. "We have only begun. Are you already unable to continue?" "Yes." I nodded desperately. "Yes, I cannot do this. Please let me go." Another click sounded. The machine took control of my other arm. "No." The arm bent. "Please don't." It snapped. A fresh wave of pain traveled through me. I screamed and begged. The creature watched without emotion. It observed me the way a scientist might observe a trapped animal. That was what I had become. A laboratory animal. An object used to measure pain. The machine broke one leg. I passed out before the second one broke. They had a way to wake me. I returned to consciousness at the exact moment the other leg snapped. The creature continued watching. "At this stage, your body has suffered severe trauma," it said. "Your stress response has released extreme levels of adrenaline and other chemicals." I could barely hear its thoughts through the pain. A machine closed around my head. Something pulled my neck upward. Pressure built along my spine. My body could not move because all 4 limbs were broken. The machine continued pulling. The pain became greater than anything I believed a human body could experience. Then there was a sudden release. Everything stopped. No pain, no voice, no light, only darkness. That was the first time I died. I do not know how long I remained dead. I woke on the floor of another room. My body was whole. Both arms were straight. My legs were unbroken. There were no wounds, bruises, scars, or blood. It was as if the experiment had never happened. But I remembered it. I remembered every second. I touched my neck and expected to find damage where my head had been pulled away. There was nothing. The room looked similar to the first one. Polished metal walls, a bench, a small sink. No doors or windows. I sat on the bench. Outwardly, I may have looked calm. Inside, I was losing my mind. Had I actually died? Had they repaired me? Was this a new body? Where had they taken me? I did not have much time to think. The nausea returned. I tried to stay conscious, but the world darkened. When I woke again, I was lying on something warm and soft. The entire room appeared to be made from living flesh. The walls moved gently, expanding and tightening like lungs. Thick lines beneath the surface pulsed with dark fluid. The floor gave slightly under my weight. The smell was clean and chemical, like a hospital. But another smell hid beneath it. Rotting meat. I was not restrained. That frightened me more. I stood and immediately wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. "Do not be afraid," the clinical voice said inside my head. "Your first test produced acceptable results. We will now continue." "You killed me," my voice shook. "You broke every limb and tore my head off." "You have been restored. That doesn't make it all right. The damage is no longer present. I remember it. That is necessary." I looked around the living room. "What are you going to do?" "We require a detailed description of your experience." "I'm terrified." "Is that detailed enough?" "When testing is complete, you will be allowed to leave." "How long will that take?" "Compliance drives progress. The more useful information you provide, the less unnecessary repetition will be required." A section of the fleshy wall opened. Something moved through it. The creature looked like a dog, but it had no fur, and its body was too long. Its mouth opened far beyond the natural shape of its head. It attacked me. The creatures watched while it tore me apart. They continued asking questions. Rate the pain, describe the fear, explain the physical sensations. I died again. That became my life. Every time I woke, I was healthy. Every day, they killed me. I counted for as long as I could. In total, I died 1,278 times. Sometimes they broke my body. Sometimes they introduced animals or creatures into the room. I was shot, stabbed, crushed, poisoned, starved, infected, drowned, burned, frozen, and torn apart. They exposed me to diseases that destroyed my body within hours. They placed me in rooms where the temperature rose until my skin separated. They dropped me from heights. They removed organs while I remained awake. They tested electricity, pressure, radiation, chemicals, weapons, and things I still cannot describe. Anything that normally took days or weeks to kill a person was accelerated. They did not want to wait. If an infection would normally take a month, they changed it so I died before the end of the day. Sometimes death came quickly. I learned to appreciate those experiments. A bullet through the brain was almost a gift. An explosion that destroyed my body instantly was one of the easier days. Other deaths lasted for what felt like forever. They wanted information from every stage. Fear, pain, confusion, loss of control. The moment the body understood it could no longer survive, they wanted to know everything. I also learned what happens after death. People argue about it constantly. Some believe there is heaven. Some believe in hell, rebirth, spirits, or another world. Others believe consciousness simply stops. They are all wrong. At least, they were wrong about what happened to me. Death was nothing. I do not mean nothing in a poetic or hopeless way. I mean complete emptiness. There was no light, no sound, no smell, no body, no sense of movement or time, only darkness. But I remained aware. I existed as a thought, floating in an endless empty place. I could not speak. I could not move. I could not sleep. There was nothing to do except wait. Sometimes they brought me back immediately. Sometimes I remained in that emptiness much longer. There was no way to measure time, but I could feel the difference. The worst death was drowning. I experienced it many times. Your body knows exactly what is happening. Every part of you demands air. At first, you hold your breath and fight. Then the pressure inside your chest becomes painful. Your body begins moving without permission, desperate to reach the surface. Eventually, you inhale. Water enters your lungs. The pain is sharp and burning. Pins and needles spread across the body. Your ears ring. Your vision darkens. Then the world disappears. After that comes the void. I hated drowning more than being burned, more than being eaten, more than having my bones broken. The fear lasted too long. Every morning I woke in the same metal room. The bench, the sink, the polished walls. My body was always repaired, but my mind never healed. The creatures did not change. They remained patient, calm, and clinical. If a death had been quick, they asked what I remembered after returning. If it had been slow, they asked me to describe every stage. They repeated the same questions. Rate your pain. Describe your thoughts. At what point did you understand death was unavoidable? Did your religious beliefs change your reaction? Did you experience hope? Did you attempt to bargain? At first, I begged them. Then I threatened them. Later, I stopped speaking unless they asked a direct question. Eventually, I became numb. I would wake, sit on the bench, and wait for the nausea. I knew the day would end with another death. There was no point resisting. The creatures would fill the room with gas, take me to a testing chamber, and kill me again. That continued for 3.5 years. Then one day, something changed. I was taken into a test chamber without being made unconscious. There were no restraints. The faceless entity waited inside. I wanted to attack it. I imagined wrapping my hands around its narrow neck and making it feel even a small amount of the pain it had caused me. But my body refused to move toward it. Something inside my mind prevented the action. After this procedure, testing will be complete, it said. My heart jumped. For the first time since I had arrived, I felt hope. The emotion almost hurt. You mean you're letting me go? You will be released when testing concludes. We stated this at the beginning. I could barely believe it. All right, I said. Do whatever you're going to do. The entity moved closer. I saw its body clearly. Its skin was a mixture of pale purple and pink, like old bruises. Wrinkles appeared in places where joints should not have existed. Its arms were long enough that its hands nearly reached the floor. Its knees bent backward. Despite its strange body, it moved quickly. One hand closed around my shoulder. The grip felt like metal. It lifted me until my face was close to the vertical slit in its head. I had once seen what existed behind that opening. I never wanted to see it again. One of the tendrils on its head bent toward me. A long, bone-colored needle slid from the hole at the tip. The needle cut across my throat. Blood poured down my chest. I fell to the floor. My lungs filled. My vision faded. The final words entered my thoughts. Thank you for your cooperation. I died for the last time. Then I woke on the street. I was lying at the same corner where I had disappeared. The sky was above me. Real blue sky, not a metal ceiling. I did not know how much time had passed. I did not know whether it was the same day or another year. I only knew I was free. I lay in the road and stared upward. For the first time since being taken, I cried. Not because of pain, because it was over. I could feel the pavement beneath me. I could hear distant traffic. Wind moved across my face. I was alive in the world again. I do not know how long I remained there sobbing. Eventually, I stood and walked toward my friend's house. When he opened the door, he screamed. He looked older, his hair was longer, and he had gained weight. At first, he did not recognize me. Then he did. That was when I learned I had been missing for more than 3 years. My family believed I was dead. The police had searched for me. My photograph had appeared on television and posters. People had organized searches through nearby areas. Nobody found any evidence of where I had gone. I tried to explain. I told my friend that I had been walking to his house when something took me. I said creatures had held me in a strange facility and killed me every day. The words sounded insane even to me. The police arrived, my parents came. News reporters gathered outside. For a short time, I became a local celebrity. Everyone wanted to know where I had been. Nobody believed my answer. They believed something had happened. They could see that I had changed. I woke screaming. I could not enter hospitals without panicking. I became terrified of locked rooms, polished metal, medical machines, and strong chemical smells. But nobody believed the creatures were real. Some people thought I had joined a cult. Others believed I had lived on the street or escaped from kidnappers. Eventually, doctors suggested therapy. The psychiatrists listened while I described the experiments. They became especially concerned when I explained the deaths in detail. I could tell them exactly how the body felt while freezing. I could describe the taste of blood after certain poisons. I knew what happened to vision during suffocation. I understood how long a person remained conscious after different injuries. They believed those details proved I had experienced real violence, but they refused to accept the explanation. They tried different therapies. They asked me to search for hidden memories beneath the creatures in metal rooms. They believed that if I spoke long enough, the real kidnappers would replace the aliens in my story. That never happened. The story remained the same. I was taken, I was tested, I was killed, I was restored. They performed more medical tests. Doctors searched for drugs, brain damage, scars, bone injuries, or signs of long-term captivity. They found almost nothing. My body looked like the body of the 21-year-old who had disappeared. According to some tests, I had barely aged. That frightened the doctors more than they admitted. I still do not know what the creatures wanted to learn. Why did they need to kill one human 178 times? Were they studying pain, death, the human soul? Maybe they were trying to understand why our species fears death. Maybe they were collecting information for something else. I do not know. I only know it was real. Heat mirages terrify me now. Whenever the air above a road begins to shimmer, I stop breathing. I avoid walking near the street where I disappeared. Sometimes I wake with nausea and believe I am about to lose consciousness again. I sleep with the windows open because a closed room reminds me of the facility. I keep lights on throughout the house. It does not help. If they decide to return, I cannot stop them. No lock would matter. No weapon would protect me. They took me in the middle of an ordinary street without leaving evidence. They could do it again. They may only be waiting. Perhaps those 3.5 years were one stage of a longer experiment. Maybe releasing me was part of the test. Perhaps they are watching to see how a human lives after dying more than 1,000 times. Maybe my fear is the final set of information they need. I cannot prove any of this. I have no scars, no photographs, no object from the facility. Nothing except my memories. But I know what happened, and if the world around you ever begins to move like liquid, do not stand there trying to understand it. Run, scream, grab something, do anything you can. It probably will not help. When they came for me, the air disappeared before I had time to fight. If they come again, I will not be able to stop them. And if they ever choose you, you will not be able to stop them either. I woke up hungover again. For several minutes, I stayed on my bed without opening my eyes. My head felt too heavy for my neck, and my stomach moved with every breath. The taste of vomit covered the inside of my mouth, bitter and sour, as if something had died on my tongue during the night. I had done this too many times to count. Every weekend seemed to end in the same way. A few drinks became too many. A little fun became a night I could barely remember. Then morning arrived and punished me for every stupid choice I had made. I told myself I would stop. I always told myself that. But there was never anything important waiting for me the next day. No urgent plans. No reason to wake early. No purpose strong enough to make me refuse another drink. So I stayed out. I laughed too loudly. I drank until the night became soft around the edges, and then I returned home without remembering how I got there. The morning after was the price. With great effort, I pushed myself upright. The movement caused the liquid inside my stomach to shift violently. I pressed one hand against my mouth and waited, breathing slowly through my nose. For a moment, I thought I was going to be sick again. The feeling passed. I opened my eyes. Sunlight came through the thin cracks in the blinds and struck me directly in the face. Pain burned behind my eyes. It felt as though the light was cooking the inside of my skull. I closed them immediately. The darkness was kinder. When I opened my eyes again, I did it slowly, allowing them time to adjust. My room came into focus. It was a complete mess. Dirty clothes covered the floor. Empty cans had rolled beneath the desk and bed. Crisp packets, crumbs, takeaway boxes, and old receipts formed small piles around the room. Everything seemed to be joining together, growing like tumors inside a home that had already become sick. A shirt hung from the television. One of my shoes lay near the bedroom door. I had no idea where the other one was. There was a dark stain on the carpet beside the bed. I decided not to find out what it was. I lowered myself toward the pillow again. Before my head reached it, my phone made a sharp sound from somewhere across the room. The noise felt painfully loud. I opened one eye and tried to find it. The phone was lying face down near the desk, half hidden beneath a pair of trousers. For a while, I considered ignoring it. Nobody who mattered would be trying to reach me that early. My family knew not to call after I had been drinking. My friends were probably in the same condition as me. My girlfriend had grown tired of checking whether I was alive every Sunday morning. The phone made another sound. I sighed. I tried to stand. The moment my feet touched the floor, my stomach rose into my chest. I fell back onto the mattress and clenched my jaw. There was no way I could walk across the room. Instead, I lowered myself onto the floor and crawled. I moved slowly through the clothes and rubbish, pushing cans aside with my elbows. The cold carpet pressed against my cheek when I stopped to rest. Eventually, I reached the phone. Its screen lit my face when I turned it over. The GPS application was open. A route had already been entered. The destination was not a town, shop, house, or known landmark. It was only a set of coordinates. I stared at the numbers. The location was around 30 minutes away by car. I had no memory of entering it. I checked the search history. The coordinates had been entered shortly after 3 in the morning. According to the application, I had begun following the route. Then, I had stopped. I tried to remember the previous night. There were pieces. A bar. Music. Someone buying shots. My girlfriend leaving before me because she was angry. A taxi. Or maybe I had driven. The thought made my stomach twist for a different reason. I looked toward the window, trying to see whether my car was outside. I could not remember returning home. I could not remember finding those coordinates. Why had I wanted to go there? And why had I given up? I sat on the floor and studied the screen. The responsible thing would have been to close the application, drink some water, clean the room, and return to bed. Following the plans of a drunk version of myself was not a good idea. But the longer I looked at the numbers, the more difficult it became to ignore them. There was a pull. It was not curiosity alone. Curiosity felt light. It asked questions and waited patiently. This felt heavier. It was like a string had been tied somewhere behind my ribs, stretching from my body toward those numbers on the screen. The destination seemed familiar, even though I knew I had never been there. I felt as though something was waiting for me. The idea should have frightened me. Instead, it gave me something I had not felt in a long time. Purpose. I had nothing else to do that day. No plans, no responsibilities that could not be ignored. My girlfriend would probably refuse to answer my messages until the evening. My friends would not be awake for hours. What the hell? I whispered. I reached for the edge of the desk and pulled myself upright. My stomach objected, but less violently this time. I found my keys beneath an empty food container. I took a bottle of water from the kitchen and walked downstairs. My car was parked badly beside the pavement. At least I had made it home. I sat behind the wheel and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red and swollen. My hair stuck out in several directions. There was dried vomit near the collar of my shirt. I should not have been driving. I knew that. I told myself I would sit in the car until I felt better. I opened the water bottle and drank slowly. Sunlight reflected from the keys in my hand. For a moment, the metal seemed unnaturally bright. The keys looked like an invitation. Leave this place. Leave the dirty room, the empty cans, the meaningless weekends, and the life that had become a repeated punishment. Go somewhere else. I placed the key in the ignition. The engine started. Against every warning from my body, I pulled away from the pavement and followed the route. The drive was miserable. I kept my speed low because every turn made my stomach move. Twice, I pulled onto the side of the road and waited until the nausea passed. The city slowly disappeared behind me. Buildings became smaller. Traffic became lighter. Houses gave way to dry land, rocky hills, and long empty roads. The GPS continued leading me farther away from anything familiar. As I drove, the feeling of being pulled became stronger. I began to wonder whether I had really found the coordinates myself. Maybe someone had sent them to me. I searched my messages at a red light. There was nothing. No text, no email, no photograph, no contact with an unknown number, only the coordinates. The road eventually joined a freeway that cut through a wide desert area. Brown rock rose on both sides. The landscape looked dry and empty, shaped by wind and time rather than human hands. The GPS told me to leave the road. There was no proper exit. I drove onto a rough patch of ground near the side of the freeway and stopped as close to the destination as the car could take me. The application said I was still 15 minutes away on foot. I looked out through the windshield. A huge wall of brown rock stood ahead. At first, I saw no path. Then my phone made another sound. A message appeared on the map. Enter the passage ahead. I stared at the screen. The application had never spoken to me that way before. Usually, it said turn left or continue straight. It did not tell people to enter passages. I looked again at the rock wall. There was a narrow opening between two large sections of stone. It was barely wide enough for one person. The darkness inside it made the space look deeper than it probably was. For the first time since leaving home, I felt real fear. I considered turning around. My life was back in the city. My job, my friends, my family, my girlfriend. All the things I regularly complained about suddenly seemed safe and valuable. I could return to my bed, sleep until the hangover faded, and forget about the coordinates. But the pull remained. The invisible string inside me tightened. I opened the car door. Hot air surrounded me. The sunlight was much stronger outside the vehicle, and the dry ground reflected the heat upward. I took the water bottle and phone, then walked toward the opening. The passage was narrower than it had looked from the car. I turned sideways and pushed myself between the rocks. Stones scraped against my shoulders and back. The air became cooler as I moved deeper. I could no longer see the car after only a few steps. Why am I doing this? The question repeated in my mind. There was no good answer. I continued. The narrow path turned several times. In some places, I had to lower myself and crawl beneath stone. My headache became worse. Sweat ran down my face. I drank the last of the water and immediately regretted not bringing more. Eventually, the passage opened onto a rocky ledge. I stepped forward and looked down. Below me was a flat area of dusty sand surrounded by high canyon walls. There was nothing else. No building, no sign, no hidden road, no person waiting to explain why I had come. Only sand and rock. I checked the phone. The blue marker showed that I had reached the destination. For several seconds, I felt nothing. Then, disappointment turned into anger. I had driven 30 minutes while hungover, parked beside a freeway, squeezed through a dangerous canyon, and found an empty patch of desert. I thought about all the time I had wasted. I thought about the petrol. I thought about how difficult the return walk would be. The entire trip was another stupid decision made by a man who specialized in stupid decisions. I nearly turned around. Then I noticed the air. It smelled different inside the canyon. Sweeter, cleaner, every breath seemed to remove some of the sickness from my body. The rocks were more colorful than they had appeared from outside. They contained deep reds, soft oranges, purple shadows, and small lines of gold. The sand moved across the clearing in thin waves. When the wind reached me, I tasted something salty on my lips, even though there was no ocean nearby. The place felt alive. Not in the normal way a forest or field feels alive. It felt aware. The disappointment slowly faded. I sat on the ledge. There was no reason to rush home. Waiting in the canyon was no more painful than lying inside my dirty room. Perhaps something would happen. Perhaps Drunk Me had known what he was doing. The sun moved slowly across the sky. Hours passed. At first, I checked my phone constantly. There was no signal. The battery began dropping, so I switched it off. I watched the shadows change along the canyon walls. Small animals moved among the rocks. Insects crossed the sand. Once, I thought I saw a bird flying above, but it disappeared before I could focus on it. The heat weakened as afternoon became evening. My hangover slowly faded. Hunger replaced it. I had brought no food. Still, I stayed. I do not know why. The pull had become quieter after I reached the canyon, but it had not disappeared. It felt as though the place were asking me to wait. So I waited. The sky changed from blue to orange. The rocks seemed to glow. Long shadows stretched across the sand. My eyes became heavy. I considered sleeping on the ledge and returning to the car in the morning. Then something moved at the edge of the horizon. At first, I thought it was a cloud of dust. The shape grew larger. Something was coming toward the clearing. I stood. A creature entered the canyon. It was the size of a small house. Its movements were powerful and smooth. It galloped across the dusty ground, each step throwing sand into the air. The head looked like that of a cow. 2 red eyes burned on either side of its face. A small golden ring hung from its nose, shining whenever it caught the final light of the sun. The head rested on a thick, muscular neck. The neck was wider than a tree trunk and covered with lines that moved beneath the skin as the creature ran. Its body was much thinner than the neck. It almost glowed. Colors moved across its skin, not spots or stripes. The colors flowed into one another like light passing through water. Every beautiful color I had ever seen was there. The deep blue of the sea before a storm, the orange of fire, the green of wet leaves, the pink of the sky just before night. Colors I recognized mixed with colors that had no names. Looking at them made memories rise inside me. My mother's garden, my girlfriend's dress on our first date, the lights of the city reflected in rain, a summer evening from childhood. The creature carried all of those colors and more. 4 enormous legs supported its body. Each leg ended in something that was partly a hoof and partly a claw. The hooves struck the ground while the claws dug through the sand, throwing dust behind it. I could not move. My body had forgotten how. I stared at the creature as it crossed the clearing. Fear disappeared. Everything else disappeared. There was only beauty. I felt like a fish lifted from a dark pond and shown the entire sky for the first time. I had spent my life believing beauty came in small pieces. A face, a painting, a sunset, a song. The creature showed me that all those things were only shadows. I had never understood what beauty really was. My knees struck the rock. I did not feel the pain. Tears moved down my face. The creature did not look at me. It continued running. The colors across its body became brighter as the sunlight faded. For one moment, it seemed to carry the sunset with it. Then it passed through the clearing and headed toward the far end of the canyon. It became smaller. The colors weakened with distance. Soon, it was only a dark shape beneath the evening sky. Then, a black point. Then, nothing. The moment it disappeared, something inside me collapsed. My chest tightened. I tried to breathe, but my lungs felt empty. The world around me became gray. The rocks that had seemed vivid only minutes earlier now looked dead. The air lost its sweetness. The sand was only dirt. I looked at my own hands and hated how ordinary they were. For a while, I remained on my knees. My body felt thin and hollow, as if the creature had taken something with it when it left. Thoughts slowly returned. They did not return gently. They screamed inside my head. One word repeated in many voices. Run, I stood. Energy moved through my body. The exhaustion disappeared. The hunger disappeared. The pain in my head was gone. I climbed down from the ledge and began running across the sand. The creature was no longer visible. I did not care. I knew the direction it had taken. I followed. My shoes struck the dry ground. Dust rose behind me. I ran past rocks through shallow dips and over hard earth. The canyon widened. Night covered the sky. I did not stop. My legs began to hurt. The muscles tightened with every step. I continued. My throat became dry. Saliva thickened in my mouth. My lungs burned. Still, I ran. I thought about the city behind me. The job, my family, my friends, my girlfriend, my room, the empty cans. The repeated mornings of pain, all of it seemed unreal now. Those things belonged to a life lived before I had seen the creature. A smaller life, a blind life. Why would I return? How could I sit inside an office, answer messages, pay bills, and pretend any of it mattered? I had seen something greater than the entire human world. If I returned, nobody would believe me. If they did believe me, they would never understand. A photograph could not hold those colors. Words could not describe the shape of its body or the way seeing it had opened something inside me. I had to find it again. The ground became rougher. My ankle twisted beneath me. I fell, cutting my hands on stone. For several seconds, I lay there and listened to my heartbeat. Then I stood and continued running. Blood moved down my palms. My legs felt wet. I looked down and saw that the skin around my knees had opened. It did not matter. Somewhere ahead, the creature was still moving. I imagined its colored body crossing another valley. I imagined those red eyes turning toward the darkness. I imagined the golden ring swinging beneath its nose. The thought gave me strength. I continued through the night. At some point, I lost one shoe. Later, I lost the other. Sharp rocks cut my feet. I barely noticed. The sky filled with stars. They looked weak after the colors I had seen. Dawn eventually appeared. I was still running. The sun rose. I was still running. I do not know how much time has passed. Hours, days, perhaps longer. I have not found the creature again. Sometimes I think I see color moving along the horizon. Whenever I do, I run faster. My body is failing. I can feel it. My legs shake. My breathing sounds wet. My clothes are torn, and my feet leave dark marks on the ground. But I will not stop. I cannot stop. A world without that creature is not a world worth returning to. I understand now why the coordinates were on my phone. I had seen it the night before. Or perhaps it had seen me. Maybe some part of me remembered, even when the alcohol buried the memory. It called me back. It allowed me to see it clearly this time. And now I belong to it. I know the city is somewhere behind me. People may be searching for me. My girlfriend might be calling. My family may believe I am missing. They are right. The person they knew disappeared in the canyon. That person cared about work, money, relationships, and the small comforts of an ordinary life. I no longer understand him. I only understand the creature. Its color, its movement, its impossible beauty. The world has become darker without it. Every mile I cross is gray. Every sunrise is weak. Every living thing looks unfinished. But somewhere ahead, the creature is running. I can feel the string inside my chest. It still pulls me forward. As long as I can feel it, I know the creature exists. As long as it exists, I will continue chasing it. Even if my legs break, even if my lungs fill with blood, even if the desert opens beneath me and swallows my body, I will keep running. I will never stop. Because I have seen the color in the canyon. And now I know that a world without it is no world at all. Look, if you're still watching, you already know what this channel is. No jump scares, no fake drama, just real stories about real people who survive things most of us can't even imagine. And that's scarier than any movie could ever be. If you want more of this raw, unfiltered truth, told the way it deserves to be told, subscribe to Lacuna Noir. We're not here to waste your time. We're here to tell the stories that actually matter. Thanks for listening. Now go get some sleep, if you can.